Lyndon B. Johnson, often known simply as LBJ, emerged from the rugged heartland of Texas to become one of the most formidable figures in American politics. His journey to the White House a testament to ambition, resilience, and an unyielding drive to shape the nation's destiny. Born on August 27, 1908, in a modest farmhouse near Stonewall, Texas, in Gillespie County, Johnson entered the world amid the stark realities of rural life, where his family had deep roots as some of the earliest settlers in the Lone Star State, including cattlemen, cotton farmers, and Confederate soldiers who had carved out a living from the unforgiving land. His father, Sam Ely Johnson, Jr., was a state legislator and farmer whose fluctuating fortunes exposed young Lyndon to the harsh cycles of poverty and prosperity, while his mother, Rebecca Baines Johnson, a cultured woman with a passion for education and literature, instilled in him a love for learning and a sense of moral purpose that would define his character. Growing up in the small town of Johnson City, named after his grandfather, Lyndon experienced the pinch of rural hardship firsthand, helping with chores on the family farm, herding goats, and witnessing the struggles of sharecroppers during the early 20th century, a time when Texas was still grappling with the aftermath of Reconstruction and the boom-and-bust economy of agriculture. As a boy, he was known for his boundless energy and leadership qualities, often organizing games with neighborhood children and displaying a precocious interest in politics, inspired by his father's tales of legislative battles in Austin and the larger-than-life figures of Texas history like Sam Houston. Johnson's early education took place in one-room schoolhouses, where he excelled academically despite the limited resources, and by high school in Johnson City, he had developed a reputation as a debater and a natural orator, honing skills that would later mesmerize crowds and command congressional chambers. However, financial constraints delayed his college ambitions. After graduating high school in 1924 at the age of 15, he worked odd jobs, including a stint as an elevator operator in San Bernardino, California, and road construction in Texas, experiences that deepened his empathy for the working class and fueled his determination to escape poverty through education and public service. In 1927, with borrowed money and sheer grit, Johnson enrolled at Southwest Texas State Teachers College in San Marcos, where he threw himself into campus life, editing the student newspaper, participating in debate teams, and working multiple jobs to pay his way, including as a janitor and goat herder, all while earning a teaching certificate in 1930. His time at the college was transformative, exposing him to progressive ideas and the power of government to improve lives, influences that echoed the emerging New Deal ethos of Franklin D. Roosevelt, whom he would later idolize. Upon graduation, Johnson took a teaching position at Wellhausen School in Cotulla, an impoverished Mexican-American community in South Texas, where he taught 5th, 6th, and 7th graders, many of whom arrived hungry and barefoot, an experience that profoundly shaped his worldview, as he later reflected that seeing the faces of young people trapped in poverty ignited his lifelong commitment to social justice and equal opportunity. He organized extracurricular activities, fought for better school funding, and even used his own salary to buy supplies, demonstrating an early knack for leadership and advocacy that transcended the classroom. After a brief teaching stint in Houston, Johnson's political ascent began in earnest in 1931 when, at the age of 23, he secured a position as secretary to Congressman Richard M. Kleberg, a wealthy Texas rancher who had just won election to the U.S. House of Representatives, a role that thrust the young Texan into the whirlwind of Washington, D.C., during the depths of the Great Depression. In the nation's capital, Johnson quickly proved his mettle, managing Kleberg's office with efficiency and ambition, handling constituent mail, drafting speeches, and navigating the intricacies of federal bureaucracy, all while building a network of influential contacts, including future mentors like Speaker of the House Sam Rayburn, a fellow Texan who recognized Johnson's raw talent and took him under his wing. This period was a crash course in politics for LBJ, as he witnessed firsthand the transformative policies of FDR's New Deal, which he enthusiastically supported, seeing them as a blueprint for lifting rural America out of despair. In 1935, at the recommendation of Clayburgh and Rayburn, President Roosevelt appointed the 26-year-old Johnson as the Texas director of the National Youth Administration, a New Deal agency aimed at providing jobs and education for young people aged 16 to 25, a position that allowed him to channel federal resources into his home state, creating thousands of jobs, building parks and schools, and helping underprivileged youth attend college, initiatives that not only alleviated Depression-era suffering but also built Johnson's reputation as a dynamic doer who could deliver results. Under his leadership, the Texas NYA became one of the most effective in the nation, employing over 18,000 young Texans and constructing facilities like roadside parks that still stand today, while Johnson's tireless travels across the state, often sleeping in his car to save money, forged alliances with local leaders and voters, laying the groundwork for his own electoral ambitions. Seizing an opportunity in 1937 when Congressman James P. Buchanan died suddenly, Johnson launched his first campaign for the U.S. House of Representatives in Texas's 10th District, a sprawling rural area including Austin, running as a fervent New Dealer and pledging unwavering loyalty to FDR, a stance that resonated with voters battered by economic hardship. Campaigning relentlessly in his battered Plymouth, Johnson crisscrossed the district, delivering fiery speeches from truck beds and courthouse steps, emphasizing federal aid for farmers, electrification for rural homes, and jobs for the unemployed, while his youth and vigor contrasted with his more conservative opponents. In a stunning upset, the 28-year-old Johnson won the special election with 28% of the vote in a crowded field, becoming one of the youngest members of Congress and immediately aligning himself with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, supporting Roosevelt's agenda on everything from labor rights to public works. Once in Washington, LBJ's rise continued under the guidance of Rayburn, who helped him secure key committee assignments, including the Naval Affairs Committee, where he advocated for military preparedness in the lead-up to World War II, and used his position to funnel federal projects back to Texas, such as dams, highways, and naval bases, earning him the nickname, the best congressman for the farmer that Texas ever had. His personal life also evolved during this time. In 1934, he met Claudia Alta Lady Bird Taylor, a bright and resourceful University of Texas graduate, whom he married after a whirlwind courtship, and she became his indispensable partner, managing finances, campaigning tirelessly, and providing emotional support through the ups and downs of political life. As war clouds gathered over Europe, Johnson briefly served in the Navy after Pearl Harbor in 1941, becoming the first member of Congress to enter active duty, where he flew as an observer on a bombing mission over the Pacific, earning a Silver Star for gallantry despite controversy over the award's circumstances, an experience that bolstered his credentials as a patriot and veteran. Returning to Congress in 1942, he focused on wartime production and post-war planning, but his eyes were set on higher office. In 1948, at the age of 39, Johnson ran for the U.S. Senate against popular former Governor Coke Stevenson in a fiercely contested Democratic primary, as Texas was then a one-party state where the primary decided the winner. The campaign was brutal, with Johnson barnstorming the state in a helicopter, a novelty at the time, delivering over 1,000 speeches, attacking Stevenson as too conservative and positioning himself as a champion of Truman's Fair Deal, while leveraging his Washington connections to secure endorsements from labor unions and urban voters. The election ended in a razor-thin margin, with Johnson declared the winner by just 87 votes out of nearly 1 million cast, amid allegations of voter fraud in South Texas precincts controlled by political bosses like George Parr, earning him the derisive nickname Landslide Lyndon from critics who claimed the ballot boxes were stuffed. After a legal battle that reached the Supreme Court, Johnson was certified as the victor and took his Senate seat in 1949, undeterred by the controversy, quickly establishing himself as a master of legislative maneuvering. In the Senate, LBJ's ambition shone brightly. He cultivated relationships across the aisle, learning the chamber's rules inside out and using his persuasive skills, often through intense one-on-one sessions dubbed the Johnson treatment, where he would lean in close, tower over colleagues, and mix flattery with arm twisting to advance his agenda. By 1951, he had risen to Democratic whip, and in 1953, at age 44, he became the youngest minority leader in Senate history, then majority leader in 1955 after Democrats regained control, a position he wielded with unprecedented power, centralizing authority, controlling the legislative calendar, and brokering deals that passed landmark bills on civil rights, infrastructure, and foreign aid. As majority leader, Johnson navigated the turbulent 1950s, supporting Eisenhower's interstate highway system, pushing for space exploration after Sputnik, and delicately handling civil rights legislation like the 1957 Civil Rights Act, the first since Reconstruction, though watered down to appease Southern Democrats, showcasing his pragmatic approach to balancing progressive ideals with political realities. His national profile grew, positioning him as a potential presidential contender. In 1960, Johnson sought the Democratic nomination, but lost to the charismatic John F. Kennedy, who then surprised many by offering him the vice presidential slot to secure Southern votes and leverage LBJ's legislative expertise. Accepting the role, Johnson campaigned vigorously, helping Kennedy win key states like Texas in a narrow victory over Richard Nixon, and as vice president from 1961, he chaired the Space Council, oversaw equal employment initiatives, and undertook diplomatic missions abroad. Though he often felt sidelined by the Kennedy inner circle, chafing at the reduced influence after his Senate dominance. Fate intervened on November 22, 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas, thrusting Johnson into the presidency aboard Air Force One, where he was sworn in by Judge Sarah T. Hughes, with Jacqueline Kennedy at his side, marking the culmination of his remarkable rise from humble Texas roots to the pinnacle of American power. In that solemn moment, as the nation mourned Lyndon B, Johnson stepped forward to lead, vowing continuity while harboring grand visions for a great society that would build on his lifelong experiences of poverty, education, and political mastery, forever altering the course of the United States. Johnson's journey was not without its shadows. Critics pointed to his ruthless tactics, the 1948 election irregularities, and his complex relationship with civil rights. But his ascent embodied the American dream of upward mobility through sheer will and strategic acumen, transforming a poor farm boy into a Washington powerhouse. As president, he would sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, drawing directly from his Cutula teaching days, and launch the war on poverty with programs like Medicare and Head Start, initiatives rooted in his New Deal heritage and Texas hardships. Yet, his rise also sowed the seeds of controversy, as his escalation in Vietnam would later overshadow his domestic achievements. But in tracing his path from the dusty roads of Stonewall to the Oval Office, one sees a man profoundly shaped by his origins, driven by an insatiable hunger for power and progress. Throughout his career, Johnson's family played a pivotal role. Lady Bird not only managed their growing media empire, including radio and TV stations that provided financial independence, but also humanized his image, while their daughters, Linda and Lucy, grew up in the public eye, adding a personal dimension to his political narrative. In the Senate, LBJ's ability to count votes and forge compromises was legendary, as he once quipped, "The Senate is the only place where you can be a statesman one day and a politician the next," a duality he mastered to pass over 1,000 bills during his leadership tenure. His vice presidency, though frustrating, allowed him to chair the President's Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity, advancing desegregation in federal contracting, and his trips to Asia and Latin America broadened his foreign policy perspective, preparing him for the global challenges ahead. The Kennedy assassination, occurring in his home state, added a layer of personal tragedy and urgency to his assumption of power, as he immediately sought to unify the nation, retaining most of Kennedy's cabinet and pushing forward stalled legislation like the tax cut and civil rights bill. In retrospect, Lyndon B. Johnson's rise was a quintessentially American saga, blending frontier grit with Washington savvy. A story of how a young Texan with big ears and bigger dreams climbed the ladder of power, step by calculated step, to reach the White House and leave an indelible mark on history. His early mentors, from his father who taught him the art of compromise in the Texas legislature to Rayburn who opened doors in Congress, were instrumental, as were his own innovations, like using helicopters in campaigns and mastering media to connect with voters. Even his health struggles, including a near-fatal heart attack in 1955 that forced him to quit smoking and reassess his life, only strengthened his resolve, leading to a more disciplined approach in the Senate. As he assumed the presidency, Johnson drew on all these experiences, declaring in his first address to Congress, "All I have I would have given gladly not to be standing here today." Yet he seized the moment to honor Kennedy's legacy while charting his own course, a fitting climax to a rise fueled by Texas tenacity and unbridled ambition.